Welcome to Grow Your Own. This is the entrance to the garden, which you'll be coming through if you join us in person. So let's go in and have a look. When you come into the garden, you'll come straight into our 6-plot rotation here, which is looking pretty brown at this time of year. And we've got a greenhouse over there. Now, what are we going to talk about? During the course, we're hopefully going to help you plan a garden. Now, we do a rotation approach, which does mean digging. There are other ways of doing things, a no-dig approach, raised bed approach, and we'll discuss those. They all involve work, I'm afraid. Nothing is free and nothing is easy, or at least it's easy enough, but you still have to do the work. We'll talk about the soil, which is the principal resource that we have to nurture the growth of the vegetables and the herbs. We'll discuss what you can grow. And one of the great things about the climate here is that you can grow cool climate vegetables such as potatoes and warm climate vegetables such as tomatoes, with a little bit of help from a greenhouse or a windowsill. We'll talk about a rotation, and we'll talk about clothing. Clothing was perhaps the first decision I took seriously, and I made that decision before we even started digging in the garden, because I thought I'm going to need some firm boots, and I spent more money than I'd ever spent on any footwear to get a pair of waterproof leather steel toe-capped hiking boots, which lasted me a couple of years. Nowadays I probably have 3-4 pairs, Wellingtons, the steel toe-cap boots for doing the heavy work, tractor work and so on, little short waterproof boots so I can shoes so that I can go out when it's damp without having to wear the high piece, or even runners, and in the summer I'll even find myself in barefoot weeding in the soil, which is quite nice. Trousers, pockets, handy. I've got 6 pairs in this. These are nice sort of workman's. Carhartt's a good brand. It's cotton. They're robust and strong. Pick these up locally. Because of the temperature, I will confess I'm wearing leggings underneath these. I've had a very good pair of leather trousers which worked very well in the winter months, and in the summer you'll be down to shorts. A good coat is invaluable so that you can't get out when it's windy or wet. Now, I think we'll talk a little bit about the growing season. When is the growing season? When does it begin and when does it end? Well, in fact, the garden year can be a continuous cycle, never ending. What we can see in the garden is that we have some crops still from last year. There's some kale over there in plot 1, which we're still harvesting. It's beginning to go to seed. Pam might be able to zoom in and see the little florets coming up. Down there we have some carrots, which we'll still be pulling those up, and you want to leave carrots in the ground as long as possible, because the ground looks after them much better than when they're out of the ground. And we have some chard over there, which we can still harvest. And those are all from last year. And yet we've already started this year's planting. And you can see here in this plot, the allium. So we have some garlic, which are coming up, some more successfully than other varieties, and some onions. Now, garlic are not easy. We planted these a bit late. They should be planted in October, November, and I did not do that. The onions you can plant either at the end of the previous year or now, if you're planting sets, that is tiny onions which then grow into bigger onions, and you'll see them in your garden shop at this time of year. You can also sow onions from seed, but you'll probably be sowing them in a tray under cover to get them going, and then transplant into the main site. Let's go and have a little look into the greenhouse. Now, We have a large greenhouse here. It's probably bigger than most, and we try and grow maybe 150 tomato plants in about half of it. We've also got a couple of peach trees, which is rather fun. We've got grapevines, and we've got citrus. I think, is that a lemon? Now this is maybe only our second or third lemon. Oh, and there are two. Isn't that fun? So that's nice. We've got an olive tree. So yes, an olive tree where there are some, we will get flowers and sometimes tiny little olives, which are really no bigger than a pea and not really olivey. And we've got some vines. Now the thing about a greenhouse, which is a bit unfortunate, is that it's not easy to change the soil. So if you get diseases in a greenhouse, you want to clean it thoroughly and maybe bring in new soil. So every year I try and bring in a bit of compost for the tomatoes to raise the bed and refresh the soil. Now, I'm just going to come over here, Pam. And what we've got here is a seed tray. So this is the beginning of the gardening year, and you can buy these in the supermarket or in a garden store. These I've had for a few years. I keep reusing them. Again, disease can be an issue, so you want to clean them or refresh them, particularly if you find that you are getting disease in your environment. I've just filled it with a very basic, inexpensive potting compost. If you are planting fine seeds in a potting tray, you can find extra fine potting compost, and I have used that for some seeds. I tried growing empress trees for a couple of years, and I got them up to about this height, but they didn't survive the winter, unfortunately. The empress tree is the fastest growing tree in the world. So here we have, again, some seed packets from the supermarket, and if you want to buy supermarket seeds and you want to be organic or clean, avoid seeds which explicitly say they're genetically engineered, which is rare. But if it's an F1 variety, then those have probably seeds that you don't want to take, because they won't reproduce decent seeds. They've been hybridized and they won't produce good seeds. So these ones are all right. We have different lettuces. We've got Great Lakes, I haven't grown that. Attraction, I haven't grown those. Then we have a round lettuce, which is quite nice. And this is the Marvel of Four Seasons, a lovely lettuce which is red and soft-leaved and tasteful and not always easy. So you can just pop some seeds into your hand and then plant one, and fill your tray. If you put more than one seed in the box, in the cube, it's not going to be a big problem. You can pinch them out later as they start to come out. In fact, often that is the easiest way to sow, is to sow more seeds than you need, because as you can see you get a lot of seeds. That's far more lettuce than you're ever going to eat. That'll be hundreds of seeds, and you're not going to eat hundreds of lettuces. And then you, in some cases, cover with soil, in some case not, in some case a very slight covering of soil. And then you can water that. Now, with these trays, what you can often do is you can water from the bottom and add the water into the tray at the bottom, and then it will seep up through there. Now, if these boxes do not have a perforation, take a knife and pop a hole in the bottom so that the water can come in and come out. And the reason to water from here is then it won't shock the seed or the plant, because it'll gradually change the temperature and the moisture of the soil where the plant is sitting. Whereas if you pour it from the top, it's immediately cold and immediately wet, which they may not enjoy. And then you pop the lid on. That's going to keep the microclimate in there comfortable, and those will come up, and then you can transplant them into your rotation. Now, I might even water those because I think I might. Oh, look, and we're not lucky. A little bit of water available. So I can put some here. So I know that's going to soak up into them. And if I want to water from the top, just be gentle. And there we go. Couple of weeks we'll have seedlings, couple of months we'll have lettuce. You don't want to put those out until after March probably. They're going to need a bit of size, and if you are planting seedlings into the ground rather than seeds, that's handy because the plants will then get a jump on the slugs and so on. Good, so let's go back out. Oh look, our workers have come. If you can get workers, get workers. They're very valuable. Hello, Richard. And there's another worker. Hello, Jasper.
Hello. Sorry, I tried to escape from the working.
Yeah, well, we'll sign you up soon enough. Right. Now, so before we go into what we're growing here, let's have a look at the soil and see the different kinds of soil. If we go over there, we'll have a spade, and that will give us an opportunity to dig a bit. Now what you can see in the ground is weeds. This is couch grass. It's a beast. It has a long root and it stays there for a long time. This is one of the main tools that you're going to be using, and interestingly it's a very handy weeding tool when you want to take up things like this grass here, because you can put it flat like a hoe and take off the top. Now what's the soil like in this place? Dig in and pull it up, and just the first look at it is that it's delicious. And why do I say that? Because it's dark and it's crumbly and it has friends. Look at these lads. I mean, that is a bounty. Mr. Earthworm, Mr. Earthworm, another one down here. And I know that this soil is good because I've manured it heavily for 2 years. But you can see the goodness in it. As we go down, we're not damaging that spade, we're going to get into the subsoil. And depending on where you are, find different consistencies of the soil. And as you can see, as I go down, it's becoming a bit more sandy, it's a bit lighter, and certainly heavier. And why is it heavy? Because it's got all the soil above sitting on top of it. And then we get down, and now you can see the colour changing. And we're going to hit the subsoil in this part of the world, and there she is. So when you go down, and you can look at that, that has got the light sandy colour in that, and that's coming from the subsoil up. The other kind of soil that we have here is clay. There's a lot of clay in the field behind. Clay is impermeable, it holds water, it's not a great growing medium as a rule. Sand is the opposite. It doesn't hold water, it drains quickly. They both can be cold. And what you really want in your soil is decomposing plant matter. And this is where we see the cycle of life, because everything comes from soil and everything goes to soil. That's what the compost heap is all about. Oh look, another friend. Just in that handful. The worms, the bugs, the microorganisms, these are what make life happen. It's in symbiotic, interconnected relationships. Bugs, fungi, mycelium, decomposing plant matter, and then the hard substrate of the rocks from which the soil came. whether that be limestone or granite. We have a lot of granite in this area, bits of iron ore maybe, quartz and so on. You see lots of bits of quartz in this garden, and broken crockery from recent past and ancient past. Sometimes we find plates from 100 years ago in this garden because it's been a garden for a couple of 100 years. But this is what you're aiming for, a delicious soil. I'm going to put that in case I fall into that, which we wouldn't want to be doing. So there's the soil. Have a look at your soil. You can get your soils tested. But one of the simplest and easiest things to do is to get some pH paper, which you can buy fairly inexpensively. I get it online, but you may be able to get it from your garden shop. And you can just put the soil in a glass of water, swivel it around for a while and dip the paper. And you want a neutral pH. If it's a bit acidic, most plants won't like it. If it's too alkali, most plants will find that uncomfortable. Err on the side of alkali. The best way to amend the soil is to add well-rotted manure, well-rotted compost. That is great soil. It comes in, when it comes in, because it's been rotted, it won't have the bugs, it won't have the diseases, it may have some worms, but it won't have the large populations of invasive animals, bugs, because they have had nothing to grow in. It's basically a decomposing mass. So definitely, if you can get farmyard manure, excellent. There is no way that we can produce enough compost to serve our needs here. So either we have to grow compost, which means growing grass, cutting it, composting it, because even the kitchen waste wouldn't be insufficient, or bring in some manure. It's one of the most valuable things. You cannot find manure. I'm very lucky. A neighbour who has cows and horses drops me 16 tons at the beginning of the year if I beg. So enjoy the compost. So then we've looked at the soil and we have to decide, okay, what are we going to grow? Well, that's something for you all to sit down and just sort of make a little list of the vegetables that you like. We're not really growing flowers here. Flowers do not feed you. So we've always been aiming for the vegetable patch rather than flowers. However, there is companion planting, and some of the vegetables give lovely flowers. So every year we have marigold. Marigold are a good companion plant for the potatoes. They're beautiful. They stay late in the year. They usually come up midsummer and stay into November. They work well with the potatoes as a companion plant. Another companion planting, which is actually vegetable with vegetable, is the onion with the roots, with the carrots. We've had sweet peas in, and for the last couple of years we've planted nasturtium up and down the edges of the plots, and I think we will try and do it again this year. It makes it very beautiful, good for the bees. Nasturtium can be eaten, and if you collect the seeds you won't have to buy them the second year, because nasturtium seeds are not free, I'm afraid. But generally we're looking for food. We have a 6-plot rotation, as I said. I'm just going to run through that rotation briefly. At the end of last year we had the brassicas, then we had the beans, then we had the gourds, in here we had the roots, in there we had the potatoes, and in 6 we had the leaves. And this plot moves that way. So in this plot here, where we had carrots last year, we're going to be putting the gourds. The gourds are the pumpkins and courgettes. An easy plot, in fact, and the nice thing about those is if they're coming up, they will cover the ground and thereby reduce the weeds. The roots are the carrots. It took us a long time to get the carrots right, but now we have them, which is great. As you can see, we had more than we could sell. but they're still good. Unfortunately, the geese broke down the fence at the side a few weeks ago and ate all the tops, but the bottoms are still good for eating. What else can we say? Potatoes, they're very easy. You can put those in the next month or so. The leaves, again, that's lettuces. We don't eat a lot, and it's very difficult to sell lettuces if that's your interest, because they're so cheap in the supermarket. But if you've got something special like chard, which you can't get, strange radishes, we put those in there, black Spanish radish, endive, chicory, these kinds of things can go into the lettuce plot. Brassica is an essential part of the diet, very healthy. We grow Savoy cabbage, red cabbage, kale, curly kale, that is, and dragon kale. And I'd say dragon kale is possibly one of our favourites because it looks after itself quite well. Because it's off the ground, it doesn't get so much invasion of the slugs and the caterpillars. And it's easy to prepare because it's off the ground again, it doesn't get too dirty. The beans, an essential part of the diet again, very good for the soil. You must grow beans of some kind because it's a legume. You want to grow legumes, they fix the nitrogen naturally in the soil from the air. We grow French beans and broad beans. Pumpkin and courgette, again, easy enough, don't need too much food. Potatoes, we don't grow the normal varieties, we grow different, interesting varieties, which are hopefully not too difficult. Try and grow a variety of potatoes. We had a potato famine in the country because we grew one variety of potato, and so all of them got diseased. We've always grown, although it's a small patch, several different varieties. The first year we had 8 different varieties, one in each row. And when the blight came in late July, spreading across, you could see the mark across the plot, and it died when it hit to a blight-resistant variety. So that was very lucky. And we've kept that. We grow violettas, which are purple on the inside. We grow King Edward's, which is a very nice, tasty potato and comes to a decent size. Miro Sapo, blight resistant, a valuable variety in the garden. And we try and grow maybe ladyfingers as well. Just they're tasty, although not very easy. So that's the main idea of the rotation. We haven't got them all here, but we have some interesting tools which will be relevant. This is a 5-hole dibber. Those are 12.5 centimetre spacing, so it's very handy for measuring, but it's also what I use to plant a lot of seeds. I've used this already this year. I run down the row where I'm going to plant the onions, and then the onions just get popped in. You make a little hole about that deep, and they go in 2 centimetres. Remarkable how many different kinds of rakes one ends up using. These kinds of rakes are very handy for cleaning the weeds after you've dug and raked with one of these lads. This is a clearing rake, which is quite handy if you've got heavy grass to pull off, and I've used it in the greenhouse to clear the top. Hoes, very handy little tools. You want a few of those in your stock. This is a swivel hoe, my favourite. This head moves. When you use it in the soil, the blade cuts the roots from the top part of the plant and it slides through quite easily, and then you can remove the dead bits of the plant. But that is a very fast weeding tool. You can weed in between your rows. Go to a normal hoe, which we also use. We have a plough hoe down in the other shed as well, which is handy for making drills. And this is a chopping hoe, so that will make a nice ditch for planting the potatoes if you're going to do a lot of potatoes. And that's a cultivator. Again, very handy for cleaning the soil around the plants, removing the weeds. We have a few of those. I picked up this one last year, which I have found to be very handy, particularly for clearing around the potatoes when they're up. So another kind of cultivator. So grab a few tools and enjoy. Spade I've mentioned. Fork is sometimes used, usually for putting manure around. And then a couple of smaller hand tools. A fork can actually be very handy for weeding on the ground. What you'll notice is that the blades are twisted. So what you can do is push that through the top of the soil, and this part of the blade will cut the weed. Again, a little straight dibbing hoe to plant. Your trowel, again, for planting seedlings. A handheld cultivator, should you be going along and planting and you want to clean a little bit on the side, can be handy. And we have lots of other little toys. These are for holding down our irrigation systems which we'll talk about during the year. Irrigation is increasingly a problem. We've already had drought conditions this year. It just doesn't rain. Last year we had drought conditions. You should start collecting rainwater for your garden, because even getting water is going to become increasingly difficult and expensive. And of course, rainwater is the best water you can use. It's slightly alkali. Tap water has already been poisoned if it's coming from the urban supply. If you can get it from a stream, river, hopefully that'll be a clean stream or river, and you can use that. And that's what we do. We pump from a little stream into a reservoir, and then we water the garden. Although we've also now got this tank, and we're going to start collecting rainwater in that tank from the shelter built on the wall. For those of you doing larger scale, I strongly recommend the two-wheel tractor. It's a bit of a heavy investment, but you won't survive without it. We certainly wouldn't. Some people call it a mule. This is 12 horsepower diesel. It's got an electric start which isn't currently working. Fortunately, it's got a pull cord as well. That's a potato lifter on the back of it. But perhaps the most important tool is the tiller, which is here. You'll be able to see it's pretty dirty because it's been used recently, but it's got these nice blades spinning around, turning the soil, damaging any weeds that might be there, and preparing the seed bed for your plants. If you don't have one of those, you're going to be doing everything by hand, but that's okay. You get fit too. So there's some chard. You can see it hasn't gone to seed yet, so we can have a bit of that for lunch. You can eat it raw, it can be in a salad, fried up with a bit of cream and garlic. Delicioso. Now Pam's going to have to leap this fence as well. Oh, Pam, while we're here, why not just have a quick look over there at the bees. They won't be out today because it's too cold. What we have is I think we can walk right over there and look at the empty beehive. This hive and this hive are occupied. There's no action because it was frosty last night and they're sensibly hiding in there. But, oh, I just heard a fellow. You have to be careful because the guard bees will come and get you. So what I'm going to show you here is the hive, and this is not a normal hive. This is a people's hive, a ware hive. They're very easy because there's no frames, nothing to do except provide a nice habitat for the bees. So that's the roof. It comes off. There's an insulating layer to keep it warm. Ooh, somebody was trying to get in there. Naughty wasp. Caterpillar. This is to several wasps tried to get in there. So we're going to get rid of them. And we're just going to show you what's in here. So Pam, can you have a look in there? Oh, well, you can see it from there. So those are the top bars, and the bees fly in and they make their comb on these bars, and then the comb extends down through the hive, and you have crossbars inside the hive. So as the comb is built down, they go around the bars, and the bars hold it in case you want to take the box off. But as you can see, it's basically trying to emulate a tree, a dead, empty tree, so that the bees have a comfortable place to live. and hopefully we'll be able to put some friends in there this year and provide a nice home for those bees. And those are all homemade. Plans available online. Not too complicated. And I don't think we're going to see any bees in there. No, very quiet. Very quiet. And then we come over to the physic garden in our chaotic garden. So we started this last year. Finally, we've got marigold around the edge, and we've just started planting some various things. That's bergamot over there. This is, I think, feverfew. This is Russian tarragon. Around the edge we have the artichokes. That's a patch of chamomile. We have parsley. There's amaranth. We've just transplanted in some oregano and marjoram. The centre patch will come up as horseradish. And then in the front we've got some sage and some comfrey. So some of those things can be soil amendments. Some of them are for the bees. With this much chamomile, you will have enough chamomile tea for several years. So you get quite a lot of productivity from a small patch. And you know that it's good tea, untreated, not sprayed. You'll have plenty of oregano and marjoram. We have pop in a bay tree, and up there, rosemary is very easy once you've got a little plant established. So I recommend a herb garden because that's where we get the flavours from. And what we can see over there, Pam will just show you the geese. Now, if you don't mind the noise too much, a goose can be quite a handy creature because they are vegetarians, so they eat the grass. And you won't need to mow the lawn, but you will have to move their scat, which is fine. It's basically just like, slightly rotted grass. It's fairly innocuous, reasonable for the soil, but they eat the grass and they provide you with very big eggs, and they make a heck of a noise if anyone comes into your garden. And then the chickens over there on the other side, I put some grain over there for them. Pam can maybe see them over there on the other side in the long grass. We've got too many roosters, but that's just our policy to be fairly gentle about our approach to the garden. I suppose while we're here, we can just point out one of the other parts of the garden, which is fruit trees. So these fruit trees here, cherry trees and plum trees, we've planted all of these, very easy, pop them in the ground and leave them. And if the birds don't get to them first, you'll have some lovely cherries or plums if the weather is kind to you. And I say that because the weather is so changeable. You can certainly get a frost which will knock everything out. We planted apple trees around, which is a great bounty. The result of that, I think we have maybe 8 apple trees, 10, maybe 12 apple trees, is that we get 300 bottles of apple juice a year. And it's lovely to see the children enjoy that instead of a bottle of Coke. So there's some more trees which we've put in, and these will grow up in a while. Those are mostly cherries, so maybe not so handy. Apples are very valuable for pie and juice, and of course they're supposed to grow here. And we haven't seen can you leap the fence here, Pam? We'll walk back up to the soft fruit and finish where we started. So this is the sixth plot, and last year it was leaves, which is why the chard's in it, and this year it's going to be potatoes. So we're going to remove that chard pretty soon to give the ground a chance to settle, and we'll start planting potatoes in a couple of weeks. I think the violettas are eager to go in. If you are planting in the open ground at this time of year, you probably want to have some protection, which would be a fleece or even covering with a hay or straw to protect it. And there we go, the soft fruit. So we don't grow strawberries. I find it too difficult. Raspberries are easier. You'll see the canes, they'll just come up and give you raspberries. We've got some gooseberries, blackcurrant, red currant, and of course the blackberries are ubiquitous all over Ireland, so you just walk into the hedgerows and enjoy those at the right time of year, from the end of August I suppose it is really. Now, that was a little walk around. I hope you enjoyed our brief introduction. I'm going to have a quick look through my list, but if you have any questions please let me know. Good. Good. Well, thank you for joining. We're going to start next month. We'll actually be seeing some plants go into the ground. Might even, will we have a harvest? I think we'll have done the final harvest of the brassicas and so on. We'll move around, see the tools in action. Hopefully we'll have some people on site to join in the fun. Next month we're going to be talking particularly about planning the garden. So have a think about what vegetables you want, get in touch, share your thoughts. If you have an idea for a plan, share it and I can give some feedback. Otherwise we're going to discuss the plans next month and start the planting as we get on with the growing season. But thank you very much for joining us on this sunny morning in February. Happy gardening. Grow your own, everybody. Thank you.